talked about it for a long time, many, many years, before someone eventually wrote it down. And we don't even know who wrote the Gospels. We don't. There were some visions. Some people thought they saw some. I mean,
Oh,
some people
welcome
thought
back, you
they
guys.
saw something.
Hit
Maybe,
the subscribe button.
maybe it is possible it was made up, and there are a lot of reasons for that. But um, I think the simplest kind of thing we could conclude is there were some visions. Some people thought they saw some stuff. They came to believe it. They told it to other people. Those people came to believe it. They talked about it for a long time, many, many years, before someone eventually wrote it down. And we don't even know who wrote the Gospels. We don't. We know that there are names that the church attributes to the Gospels, but all of the Gospels were anonymous. We have no idea who actually wrote the original Gospels. And I'm willing to bet it wasn't Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I'm willing to bet it wasn't direct disciples of Jesus, but it was people who it's like a great grandchild or something, or not, maybe not that many greats, but you know what I'm saying? It's somebody down the line that has been told a story and writes it down. It doesn't make it believable, and it doesn't mean all of the events actually happened. And you don't have to have a real risen Jesus for people to believe that they saw a risen Jesus enough to create a religion out of it.
And certainly they could not have invented it in Jerusalem, where an empty tomb existed.
We do not know that an empty tomb existed. Like, that is not something that has been proven. It is a claim made in the Gospels, but there are lots of claims made in the Gospels that I don't believe. There was this man named Joseph of Arimathea who was apparently some kind of a secret follower of Jesus, and after Jesus died, he went to Pontius Pilate and he requested to pay for Jesus' burial. In Matthew, he's described as like a rich man, just kind of in passing, but in the book of Mark, he is described as a like respected member of the council, and apparently he was someone who believed in Jesus and wanted to pay for the burial of Jesus, because otherwise Jesus was not going to be buried. He was treated like every other criminal who was crucified, and he would have been left on the cross. It was like this humiliating display that the Romans like to engage in to really ward off people from committing crime. So they say, okay, we'll put them up on the cross and leave them there, let the animals cut their eyes out. Animals will eat them up, and they'll be on display, and it'll really show people this is what happened to you. So that would have been the most likely thing that would have happened to Jesus. And there's no reason for Jesus to even have had a burial in the first place. And I don't really buy the story that Jesus had a burial. I think that was added after the fact, because in order to convince people that Jesus rose, you have to convince people there was an empty tomb, because without the empty tomb, how are you going to convince people? Are you just going to say, oh, he jumped off the cross and appeared? No, like they have to make up a burial, and they have to put Jesus in the tomb so they can say there was an empty tomb. It's just a way of kind of progressing the story, and it's not rooted in what the reality of how things were back then. There's no reason Jesus would have been given a burial. There's no reason that Pontius Pilate would have been willing to allow Jesus to be given a proper burial. So I do think that part was embellished. I think that part was made up. There's really no way of knowing. Christians claim that every claim of the Gospels is true. I am not of that camp. We can pick through the Gospels to find truth claims, but not everything that was claimed in the Gospels is true. And I think that's how a lot of historians tend to look at these texts, is they kind of sort through to see what could be historically accurate and what's just speculation or what could have been made up. And I think it's highly possible and likely that the burial was made up. It was not an empty tomb.
Motherfuckers.
Freaking funny. And currently, I came across one of these tweets from a guy named Learning the Law, and it was so freaking funny. And it's currently trending in the Assassin's Creed community, where you can see an AI-generated image of an Assassin's Creed character on a wheelchair, and he quotes it as Ubisoft games in 2030. Honestly, for those of you guys who don't know what's going on with Ubisoft, they just decided to add this crippled character in Rainbow Six Siege as one of the operators that you can play as. And he's going to be a protagonist of the first first-person shooter operator. Now, I think a lot of people have gone completely nuts after they've seen this stuff. Whatever Ubisoft is doing, they're clearly promoting some sort of a DEI agenda. Now, keeping this in mind, just imagine we get an Assassin's Creed game where the main protagonist is a cripple, and he needs to use, like, the wheelchair, and they kind of just come up with some sort of explanation, and they might decide to make the modern character as a...
And if that's the case, then Turek's argument completely falls short here.
In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the New Testament writers did not create the resurrection. The resurrection created the New Testament writers. There would be no New Testament if it wasn't for the resurrection.
No, there would be no New Testament if it wasn't for the claims of the resurrection. You can still get the New Testament without there actually being a resurrection. You just have to have people claiming that it happened. Years and years and years after it supposedly happened.
Now, even if the New Testament never existed, Christianity would still be true. Why? Because Christianity is based on an event, the resurrection. You realize there were thousands of Christians before a line in the New Testament was ever written?
It just means a lot of people believed it.
Come on, guys.
That's really all it means.
Why? Because an event occurred, the resurrection. You have to have more faith to believe it didn't occur than it did.
I don't
And if
believe
God
it.
exists, and He does, and can create the universe out of nothing, then He can certainly resurrect Jesus from the dead. That's why we believe in Christianity.
Notice how at the end of it, he says, that's why we believe, not that's why it's true.
Okay, hold on a second.
The video is titled 4 Reasons
One,
Why
two,
Christianity
one,
is True.
2, 3.
But he ends the video by
Four.
saying, this is why we believe it. Those are two very different claims, don't you think? Christianity is true. I believe Christianity is true. One is a claim to objective truth, and the other is a subjective opinion about what is true. And so Frank takes us through this entire video as if he's going to prove something, but he ends it by saying, well, this is why I believe it. This is convincing enough for me. But he presents it in a way that you're supposed to believe it too. It's supposed to be true for you too. And nothing follows here. The problem with Frank Turek's approach here is that he presents things in a way that are assumed to be true without actually providing why they're true. And he makes very abstract claims about possibilities and presents them as though they aren't possibilities, but they are probabilities. What he's saying is the truth, when really he's just exploring the possibilities of truth. But he's decided that because
Hold on, guys.
whatever he believed could possibly be true, it is true. He says there's 4 reasons why this is true. But he doesn't give 4 reasons. He doesn't give any kind of hard evidence why, because his belief is not based on evidence. It's based on faith, and faith alone. And so many Christians fall for these apologetics because they are presented in such ways, in such confident ways. You know, he's got a lot of confidence when he says these things. And when you're programmed from birth to believe a certain thing, and to believe that thing to be true, it can be really difficult to think outside of that box. It says, oh, well, obviously truth exists, God exists, miracles exist, and I just proved to you that those things exist, and so therefore what I'm saying must be true. That all leads to Christianity, and it's one big non sequitur. It doesn't follow. You have to jump and make so many conclusions and so many assumptions and have so much faith to jump to the conclusion that he's made here. And even at the end, he admits, he's not concluding that this is why it's true. He's concluding this is why we believe it's true. Because it's sufficient for us to believe as Christians. But it's not sufficient for me. And that's the point. We all examine things to see if they fit, if they work, if they're true. We all have our own methodologies, some better than others, and we're all kind of subjectively approaching these things to determine if it's convincing for us. And this is not convincing for me at all. If this is supposed to convince me, he's done a very poor job, which I'm not surprised by. But that's because he doesn't actually have anything of substance to offer, and so he has to kind of build up these apologetic arguments, throw them out at a rapid pace, and hope they just stick to the minds of people that aren't thinking critically. They're not scrutinizing it. They're not stopping, pausing, and asking the questions. They're just, he's just kind of blurting it out. This is true. This is true. This is true. Let's just keep going. Let's just move right through this. He doesn't give you time to pause and think about the claims that he's making. I'm sure you could pause the video, but it's not designed in that way to really make you think. It's designed to reinforce programming. That's all this is. This is apologetics to reinforce programming, and it doesn't actually come to any conclusion rooted in reality. It ends with, this is why I believe it, because it's convincing for me. Because I live in a world of cognitive dissonance where I accept things based on faith within this one area of my life. And then all the other things I require more evidence than is necessary. When it comes to the origin of the universe, the Big Bang, evolution, things like that, we have mounds of evidence and proof for those things. But he requires so much more for those things. But then when it comes to his thing, his Christianity, his religion, he doesn't really require anything at all. He just thinks of all the possibilities, decides that if it's possible, it must be true, and therefore God. The end.
27.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you felt that this was compelling or convincing, maybe there's something that I missed that you want to kind of toss in, give me your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think. I might do some more videos on Frank Turek because he's a very interesting character, and I am always getting people in the comments saying, go to Frank Turek, listen to Frank Turek, he'll tell you everything you need to know. He's one of the last ones I would trust to give me any information about truth or reality. Let's just put it that way. So thank you so much for watching. Please, if you like this video, leave a comment, like it. If you aren't subscribed, please do so and ring the bell. That helps you see my videos when I post them, and it helps my videos get out to more people who I need to see them. People, who want to hear the things they're thinking said out loud. Find a place where they can deconstruct and feel free to think critically and apply scrutiny to what they believe. So thank you again for your support, and I'll see you next time.
Get your fucking ass over there, sack of shit.
A big part of deconstructing from Christianity is deconstructing your concept of God. Who is God? What is he like? What are his characteristics? What are his intentions? How does he treat people? For me, this was the starting point, the catalyst for my deconstruction, was examining the biblical God and comparing him to the God that I believed in as a Christian. For me to deconstruct everything that I believed about myself, about the world around me, about my reality, I had to first come to this realization that the God I was serving was not a good God. When I realized that this God was totally incompatible with a God of love and goodness and compassion and patience, I really had to re-examine everything. Because I thought, if my entire flawed, if I don't really understand the God that I worship, then I might be wrong about all of this. And so I had to really kind of stop and re-examine God and who I believed God to be in order to really get a firm grip on where I stood. And it was such a struggle coming to realize this, because I truly believed in a God of love, a God who was was the ultimate source of love and light and goodness. That all good things came from this God, and that
Exactly.
love could not exist separate from this God. But when I read passages like 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7, where it says, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no records of wrong, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. When I read that, and then I compare that to the characteristics of the biblical God, I am seeing polar opposites. And if we believe that God is love and God is the source of love, and we believe that love is defined the way it is in 1 Corinthians, then when we look at the character of God and when we look at the definition of love, those two things will be compatible. They'll fit. I want to kind of go through this list, this 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. I want to go through this list of how love is defined, and I want to compare it to the biblical God and the actions that he takes throughout the Bible in the Old Testament and the New. And I want to see where we land at the end of this. You see where you land at the end of this. So let's go down the list and let's see. First, we have love is patient. What about when God commanded Jonah to go out and call out the evil, wicked ways of the people of Nineveh? And Jonah didn't really want to do that. He fled. He ran away because that was not something he was interested in doing. Well, what did God do? Did God speak to him? Did he try to reason with him? Did he try to explain to him that he would always be with him and protect him? No, what God did was send a giant storm to kind of
But what if he
consume the
didn't do that? What if
waters
that's
of where Jonah was.
what
Jonah
God was
got on
trying
a
to show
boat
us?
with
If
this
you don't do what he
crew of
says, it
people,
leads to.
and there was this giant storm that arose, and the people in the boat realized that it was Jonah's God who was creating the storm, and so they concluded that they needed to toss Jonah overboard in order to calm the sea, and so they did. And then what did God do? Did he save him and then try to reason with him? No. He sent a giant fish to swallow him up, and he lived in the belly of this fish for several days before getting spit back out. And then eventually he did do what God wanted him to do, because God really knows how to get his way. Now, I don't consider God sending a giant storm and a giant fish to swallow Jonah up. as patient. It kind of seems like a patient God would have spent more time with Jonah rather than just barking out commands. He would have reasoned with him. He would have talked to him, and he would have tried to understand where Jonah was coming from when Jonah was saying that he was afraid, or when Jonah was showing that he was afraid. Obviously, Jonah didn't want to go to this city that had a bunch of evil people and call them out. That's dangerous. And so he became afraid and he ran away, like a lot of people would probably do in that situation. But in this city that had a bunch of evil people and call them out, that's dangerous. And so he became afraid and he ran away, like a lot of people would probably do in that situation. But instead of trying to understand, instead of reasoning with Jonah, God just takes the most drastic action possible to get his way. That doesn't feel very patient to me. Next up, we have love is kind. I'd say that drowning the entire world in a flood because you didn't like how humans turned out is not very kind. I'd say cursing all of humanity because two people ate a piece of fruit is not very kind.
Exactly.
Creating people just so they can serve and worship and love and adore you and glorify your name into eternity, and then punishing them for not doing that is not very kind. Genocide, endorsing slavery, these are things that I don't see to be very kind, but I see that the biblical God does over and over and over again. So what about love does not envy? God calls himself a jealous God over and over and over and over again. Jealousy is when you're afraid that someone else is going to take what you have. You know, you have something and you're jealous for that thing. You don't want someone else to have it. Envy is a little bit different. Envy is wanting something that somebody else has. You know, so they have a possession, you want it, you envy that. But all throughout the Bible, God is jealous for his people. He's jealous for them in a way that he doesn't want them straying. He doesn't want them loving other gods. You shall have no other gods before me. It's in the Ten Commandments. And so, in a way, I feel like it's just a precursor to envy. He's jealous for his people because when his people go and worship other gods, he becomes envious and he wants those people. He wants their attention. He wants their adoration. He wants their worship. And if they're giving it to some other god, then isn't he being envious of what this other god has? I mean, is that not the definition of envy? And so it's interesting to me how God gets away with being jealous, but he says, don't be envious. Love does not envy. Yet, God envies. What about love does not boast? This is an interesting one because I feel like the entire Old Testament is just God boasting about his power and his glory and how great he is and how wonderful his world is and how he can do anything and everything. And we're just mere mortals. I feel like that is the Old Testament in a nutshell. But if we look at specifically Job 38 through 40, in Job 38, God is kind of speaking back to Job after Job has been lamenting all of his suffering. And he spends the chapters 38 through 40 basically just bragging about how great he is. He says, who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Tell me, if you understand, who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched the measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone, while the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy? That is just the first 7 verses. If you keep going, it just continues. God is just bragging about all of the great things he's done. Where does the darkness reside? Can you take them to their places? Do you know the paths to their dwelling? Surely you know, for you were already born. You have lived so many years. Look how snarky God is. Like, he's basically just telling Job, what are you complaining about? You don't know anything. I know everything. Were you there at the beginning of the creation of the universe? Were you there when I formed the clouds and formed the sky? You don't know anything. You're just a mere human. You're just a man. I'm God, and I can do anything.
It does
Now,
seem
keep
like
in
that.
mind, this is after Job suffered and lost pretty much everything in his life. So it's not really the time for God to be boasting, but he is. And
Exactly.
so right here, love does not boast, yet God spends multiple chapters in Job after having allowed him to suffer immensely for no reason other than just to win a betting match against Satan. uh, he just goes on and on. Look how great I am. That's boastful. Love is not proud. Yet in Genesis 1:31, God is proud of his creation. Genesis 1 verse 9, and God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place. Let the dry land appear, and it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. In verse 12, the earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, and each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God is proud of his work. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to be proud of your work. I don't think pride is a bad thing at all. The Bible really, really likes to drive this point that pride is such a bad thing. Pride comes before the fall. Is that biblical, or is that just something people made up? Oh, no, it is. It is. It's in Proverbs. You know, sometimes people say things like, God only helps those who help themselves, and you think, that's not in the Bible, but yeah, Proverbs 16:18, pride goeth before destruction. So over and over again, the Bible very much warns against pride, about feeling good about the things that you do, because you are just a mere mortal. You are not a sinner, and nothing you do is good, and God is great. I mean, that is the message of the Bible, is it not? In Matthew 3, at Jesus' baptism, right after he was baptized, in verse 17, it says, and behold, a voice from heaven said, this is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. I am proud of my Son, who is also me, as a human incarnate. You know, so basically he's proud of himself. He's at least proud of the Son he created, and if Jesus is God, in some warped roundabout way, however they like to use their apologetics to explain that, if Jesus is God, then God is saying, I am pleased with myself. I am proud of this. God has pride. And again, there's nothing wrong with having pride. I don't think this is necessarily a bad trait, but if we're going off of the Bible, we're going off of what the Bible says, and the Bible says that pride is a bad thing, and then the Bible is saying that love is not proud. When God shows that he is proud of the things that he does, he is not acting in love. Love does not dishonor others. There are people that he considers to be wicked or bad or doing things he does not like, but I'd say he certainly dishonors people. Isaiah 3 verse 16 says, the Lord said, because the daughters of Zion are haughty and walk with outstretched necks and glancing wantonly with their eyes, mincing along as they go, tinkling with their feet. Therefore the Lord will strike with a scab the heads of the daughters of Zion, and the Lord will mincing along as they go, tinkling with their feet. Therefore the Lord will strike with a scab the heads of the daughters of Zion, and the Lord will lay bare their secret parts. Well, you can guess what that means. It says, in that day the Lord will take away the finery of the anklets, the headbands, and the crescents, the pendants, the bracelets, the scarves, the headdresses, and the armlets, and the sashes, perfume boxes, and amulets. It goes on and on. It says, instead of perfume, there will be rottenness. Instead of a belt, a rope, and instead of well-set hair, baldness. So he's going to make these women bald. And, you know, later in the Bible, it says a woman's hair is for glory. So I think that is the very definition of dishonoring a woman. And yeah, sure, you know, can say these women are haughty. They walk with outstretched necks. They're mincing along as they go and tinkling with their feet. So apparently these women are just too fine for God, too fine to exist, and so God wants to dishonor them. In Genesis 11, 1 through 9, think about, you know, we talked about the Tower of Babel in a recent video, and kind of went through that story. And in that story, the people are building a tower up to the sky. They're trying to make a name for themselves. They're trying to start a legacy. And so they come together as one group, and they work together, and they start building this city. And it doesn't seem to be any kind of an act of rebellion against God. It doesn't say anything about that. It just says that they wanted to create a name for themselves. But what does God do? He confuses all of their language and scatters them out so they can't keep building and working together. He dishonors their legacy that they're trying to build. He dishonors their name that they were trying to proclaim. And so, obviously, we see that when it says love does not dishonor others, that is completely opposite of how God acts, especially toward people that he doesn't like, or people that do things he would prefer them not do. Love is not self-seeking. Now, this one is, I don't know how anybody could look at God and think he's not self-seeking. This is a God who created humanity so that they may glorify him. In Isaiah 43:7, it says, everyone who is called by my name, whom I created for my glory, whom I formed and made. This is a God who says again, you shall have no other
Hold on,
gods
fucking good.
before me. I am number one. You will worship me. You will love me. Look at the first 4 commandments. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. You shall not make any graven image. You shall not take the Lord your God's name in vain, and you must remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. The first 4 commandments, they're supposed to be the ultimate source for morality, moral values, is all about God. It's all about focusing on him and what he wants. And he's the one commanding it. He's the one saying, hey, you must love me. You must obey me. You must honor my day. You must not take my name in vain. To argue that this God is not self-seeking is to argue against the biblical God. Love is not easily angered. We look all throughout the Old Testament, and God pours his wrath on everyone for every reason. God is very angry with humanity, and he is always pouring his wrath on humanity. And then you get even to the New Testament where he says he's going to pour his wrath on all of the sinners when they enter hell. And so, yeah, I mean, I'd say that God is up there. He's pretty angry. Like all throughout the Bible, he is described in a way that makes him seem very, very mad, very full of wrath. And Christians will say, well, he's so angry at sin. He's mad about sin. Well, okay. He's still mad. He's still easily angered. And if you are God, you are the most powerful entity in the universe. You created all things. And you created everything knowing how it would all turn out, knowing all of the things that would happen that would make you so angry, then you really have no reason to ever be angry. Because if you are angry about something that's happening that you planned to happen, then you're just making yourself mad. And so, in my opinion, that means you are easily angered. Love keeps no records of wrong. Well, tell that to all of the descendants of Adam and Eve, because apparently Adam and Eve ate a piece of fruit that God told them not to eat, and now all of us have to suffer the consequences for that. If you're looking at it through the kind of evangelical Protestant lens, and you have this inherited sin, this original sin, all people are sinners, all people are cursed with this sin nature because of what 2 people did that none of us know and have ever met. If that is true, well, then it seems God does keep records of wrongs. It seems he remembers well when people do wrong because he curses all of humanity for it. So I think God is keeping records. Otherwise, we wouldn't all be punished for what somebody else did. Not only that, but look at Exodus 20, verse 5. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sins of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me. So, yeah, I'd say that God he's keeping a list and he's checking it twice. Love does not delight in evil. Well, I don't know about delighting, but God created the world, said it was good. And then in Isaiah 45, verse 7, it says, I form the light and create darkness. I make well-being and create calamity. I, the Lord, do all of these things. Calamity is synonymous with evil, and many translations do use the word evil. And regardless if you're saying calamity or evil, I would say that anybody who intentionally causes calamity is causing evil. If we're going to use that term evil to describe really bad and immoral things, then intentionally causing calamity, which is disaster and distress, that is evil. That's evil. And so if God looks at his creation, if he thinks that it is good, and a part of his creation is the creation of calamity and evil and bad and all of that, then I can only conclude that God delights in evil and calamity. Love rejoices in truth. One instance that came to mind when I was thinking on this and thinking, okay, love rejoices in truth. Are there any ways in which God does not rejoice in truth? And the first thing that popped in mind was Abraham and Isaac. When God instructed Abraham to go and sacrifice his son, he didn't tell Abraham that there was a different plan. He didn't tell Abraham, don't worry, you're not going to have to do it. He said, I want you to go do this. Now, I'm not saying he directly lied, but I think that in a way he deceived Abraham because he gave him an order that he didn't intend for him to fulfill. He was testing him. And so in a way he was being deceitful. in order to get Abraham to do something, in order to test him and see what he would do.
Maybe it's
So,
like that.
you know, while I don't think that we could make a very strong case for God not rejoicing in truth, I think that there are definitely times when God did not use the truth, but instead chose to be deceptive to fulfill his own purpose. Love always protects. Love always protects. Except for when God gets angry at the entire world and drowns them in a flood. I think about, like, the babies and the toddlers. And babies and toddlers. There were people of all ages. I would imagine there always have been. So there are these babies and toddlers that die as a part of this judgment against the world, that die in this worldwide flood. God's not protecting them. God was not protecting those children at that time when he. Or what about during the Passover, when people were instructed to put the blood on the door to spare their firstborn? Well, it says the plague came through and it killed every firstborn of who didn't have the blood on the door, including slaves. So there were Egyptian slaves who lost their firstborn children of all different ages, whether they were grown or they were babies, it doesn't really matter. God did not protect them. They were not protected. It was their families' responsibility to protect them, but in that circumstance, with the blood over the door. But according to this, love always protects, and if God is love, then God will always protect you. But I don't see that happening throughout the Bible. I see God hurting people. I see God encouraging people to own other people as property, to enslave them. You're not protecting someone if you're telling your people to enslave them. And so maybe God protects his specific chosen people that he likes and favors, and only when it suits him in his glory. But look at Job. I mean, God may have protected Job, but he certainly didn't protect Job's family from Satan. God allowed Satan to go and do the things that he did to Job. Love always trusts. Well, I'd say that a God who tests his people, and people are always saying God is testing you when he feels withdrawn or when you're going through something, I'd say that that is a show of a lack of trust in humanity.
Exactly.
If love always trusts, but God doesn't trust people enough to not test them to see if they're going to be faithful and behave and be obedient, well, then God's not trusting people. And so therefore, if love always trusts and God is not being trusting, well, then God is not love. It's really easy to just kind of break that down and conclude that. And then you have to special plead for God for that not to be the case. To love God and to be loved by God should be this mutual thing. It kind of seems like in this passage, this passage in Corinthians, it's all about, this is how love is supposed to act when humans are engaging in love. But when God does it, it's different. We're going to special plead. We're going to make special exceptions for God when it comes to the word love, because he's not hitting any of these. Now, after that, we have love always hopes. Love always perseveres. Okay, sure, God has hope and he perseveres. All right, so he's got 2 out of, like, I don't know, 15 that we have here. I'm just not seeing a God who aligns with this definition of love. Again, you have to special plead for God. You have to make a special exception for God. And so when Christians say that God is love, and then they give this definition of what love is and what it looks like, how to recognize love. And then you compare the two and you say, well, God doesn't do any of these things. The Christian is going to respond and say, but he's God. He's way above ours. You can't compare God to a human being. But what I'm saying is that you're telling me that this God is love. And then you're defining love as patient, kind, not quick to anger, doesn't envy, all of these things that are the complete opposite picture that we're getting of God in the Bible. Mostly the Old Testament, but even throughout the New Testament too. We just see a different picture. And so you have to get to a point where you think, okay, is this God making sense? Is this lining up? Is it because to me it doesn't look like it. To me what it looks like is we're getting 2 different ideas of this God. One that we're reading about and one that we're being preached about. And these two gods are polar opposites. What they're telling me about God doesn't align with the God that I'm reading about. Which God do I follow? Which God do I believe in? Do I believe in a God who is love? Do I believe in a God who passes on, who is not quick to anger, who doesn't see himself? Well, if I believe in that God, then I certainly can't believe in the God of the Bible. And if I believe in the God of the Bible, then I certainly can't believe that love is any of these things the Bible claims that it is.
Totally can't
Love.
handle.
So
What the fuck are you doing?
God is not love, or this God does not exist. It's made up.
Idiots.
It's man-made. So I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. Let me know if there's something you think I missed. Maybe there's some verses that you thought of while we were kind of going through the list. Maybe there's some verses that you thought of that really kind of drive that point that God is not being reflected in this definition of love. So let me know what you thought. Leave your thoughts in the comments, whether you agree or you disagree, whatever it may be. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell if you want notifications for when I post future videos. That helps me out. It helps get my videos out to more people, and helps more people see
I
my
do
videos who
something like
might
this.
need to hear someone say these things out loud that they've been thinking. So I appreciate you so much for joining me today, and I think that's all I've got. So I'll see you next time.
You're not doing that shit. Get the fuck up there. Goddamn game. I agree.
I think it's highly
And that's very I agree with Frank's other stands on the wall argument, but he fails in answering this question clearly. I'll comment some to the video clip.
Yes, sir. Hi. So I wanted to address your comments.
By the way, what's your name?
I'm Jeremy.
Hey, Jeremy.
So I actually used to be a Christian and was very devout for most of my life. Left the faith 4 years ago. Actually, soon after reading your book and several other books on Christian apologetics and doing a lot of research.
Can I ask you why? Why did you leave?
The reason why I left is because I didn't believe that it was
A lot of it?
no, or that there wasn't strong enough evidence to believe that it was true.
Okay.
So, but to address the idea of the stealing from God, that's it's a bit of a fallacy because what he was pointing out was that we're looking at things in the Old Testament that are immoral by Christian standards. So, pointing out logical inconsistencies. If the Bible teaches certain moral standards, and then God violates those standards, it is not consistent with Himself.
Well, give me an example of what you mean.
So, biblical reference, but yeah.
Well, we have to look at the passage and exegete it and see what it said.
But
To take someone's life. and
so
make
if
it
we're expected to be like God and in God's image, then why is something
Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. If you don't already know, my name is Christy and I am an ex-evangelical Christian, and this channel aims to help people who are deconstructing from their evangelical, conservative, or fundamentalist Christian ideologies. Today I want to talk about the concept of hell, and I want to deconstruct it as it is taught to us in the Christian churches. Now, around 15 years ago is when I really started questioning what I believed and walking away from the Christian ideologies that I was raised with. Even though my family knew that I was questioning everything and I wasn't really aligning with what they were believing, they invited me to join them for the annual Mother's Day service. I had attended it every year since I was a kid, and so I agreed, for my mom and my grandmother to attend this service. In the past, it had always been a fluffy very, very different. They did not hand out any roses. I don't remember them actually honoring any of these categories of moms. Instead, it was an entire sermon that was dedicated to the pain that parents and grandparents feel when their children and their grandchildren walk away from the faith. Now, this was a very small church, and I would be willing to bet that I was the only person in the congregation that no longer believed. And the pastor spent most of the service looking me directly in the eyes as he talked about the pain and anguish of mothers and grandmothers when they see that their children are turning away. He even talked about how one day these children would be screaming from the pits of hell, having the ravens pluck their eyes out, while their parents were rejoicing in heaven in eternal bliss. This was the last church service that I attended, and I was very close to walking out because it felt very pointed, but I remained. I was very, very people-pleasing back then, and so I remained seated, I stayed there, and then I just never went back again. This whole bit about, the ravens plucking the eyes out comes from Proverbs 30:17, where it says, "The eye that mocks the father, that scorns an aged mother, will be pecked out by the ravens of the valley, will be eaten by the vultures." And to me, the goal was very clear. The goal was to instill fear. It was not to celebrate others. It was to instill fear in me and all of those around me so that we wouldn't go to hell. And isn't it interesting how so often evangelical Christians have to resort to fear and guilt and shame and all of these negative feelings in an attempt to get you to come around to their viewpoint and in an attempt to convert you to their religion that is supposed to be a religion of love and peace and peace. I'm not saying sermons on love and peace and hope, but notice how when the love and peace and hope doesn't really work on people, they immediately resort to fear, because fear is a very powerful tool in attempting to get people to believe something or convert to a religion. And hell is a very serious threat. Hell is the greatest existential threat I think that you could give someone, is to convince them that if they don't adhere to your ideologies or believe what you believe, that they will be eternally condemned to this torturous place where the fire will never go out, and they will just have to live in that existence with no hope of getting out of it. A lot of people fall for this fear. I did. I was scared for a very long time. And so my goal today is to kind of take this hell construct, to deconstruct it, and to really encourage you to think more critically about what you believe, to think more critically about this hell concept. And if you are kind of living in that fear of hell, maybe you are deconstructing. Maybe you have figured out that you really no longer believe in the Bible or God or Jesus. You're really not sure where you're at, but that fear of hell still lingers. What I want to do is encourage you to think more critically through this hell concept and see if at the end of this you still feel as though it's an actual serious threat. And I have made a previous video on overcoming hell anxiety, and I will link that in the description, as I think that might help you if you are experiencing this kind of lingering fear. But I have a lot more that I want to add to it, in a different way I want to kind of construct and organize this, and share some things that I've learned along my journey that your pastor probably didn't preach from the pulpit when he talked about hell. So let's start by reviewing what most of
Life in the future. I do want to check out the drawers. If they don't stack up the bundles, I want to know. I want to know.
cat channel for cats of all ages. Curious kittens.
Get the
Cuddly
fuck
seniors.
out of here with that bullshit.
What does the future hold? What will become of this planet and its inhabitants in the centuries to come? We're living in a historical period that sometimes feels like the prelude to something truly remarkable or terribly dire about to unfold. This captivating video seeks to decipher the signs and attempt to construct plausible scenarios from the nearly nothing we hold in our hands today. As always, it will be scientific discoveries leading the dance of charge, while philosophers, writers, politicians, and all the others will have the seemingly trivial task of containing, describing, and guiding. Before embarking on our journey through time, let me state the obvious. No one knows the future. Numerous micro and macro factors could alter this trajectory. World wars, pandemics, unimaginable social shifts, or climate disasters. Nevertheless, we're setting off. And we're doing so by discussing the remaining decades of the century we're experiencing right now. Out of all the emerging technologies in the 21st century, artificial intelligence will undoubtedly prove to have the most significant impact. By the 2020s, AI had already reached a level of sophistication comparable to human abilities, both in chatbot conversations and other language models. However, by the mid-century, even more significant developments will lead to social transformations capable of disrupting the lives of billions. For instance, the automation of many traditional jobs will lead to increased technological unemployment and a growing demand for welfare reform, such as guaranteed universal income. The decline in fertility rates and the extension of life expectancy will create an increasing imbalance between employees and retirees. Alongside this, immigration will continue to be a challenge, with an urgent need to attract more foreign workers while controlling the already massive number of economic refugees. In addition to medical advances in reversing biological aging, other noteworthy milestones of this century will include humans landing on Mars and the first detection of a biological signature on an exoplanet. But let's take a closer look at some of the most significant events that, in our opinion, might occur, even though they may not unfold in the exact order or year we indicate in our predictions. 2030. The extremely large telescope is fully operational. Finally completed and inaugurated, this telescope, with its extraordinary 39-meter diameter mirror, will have a far-reaching impact on astronomical knowledge. It's set to revolutionize our understanding even more than the James Webb Space Telescope, which costs 10 times as much. Constructed in the Chilean Andes by the European Southern Observatory, it will possess the power to directly capture images of exoplanets, delve into their atmospheres, and potentially detect signs of water and organic molecules in protoplanetary disks around distant stars. 2031. The International Space Station is deorbited. After entering service in November of 2000, the ISS has gathered significant wear and tear from solar radiation and the relentless effects of extreme temperatures. With its microgravity environment, the station has led to breakthroughs in diverse areas, from medicine and biotechnology to material science. It's been pivotal in monitoring Earth's ecosystems and responding to natural calamities in real time. Plus, it's served as a platform for testing future spacecraft technologies and understanding the long-term impacts of space travel on human health, crucial for paving the way for human exploration of our solar system. 2035. The consumption of lab-grown meat is rapidly gaining traction. As early as the 2020s, strides in the field of biological tissue engineering allowed for the cultivation of synthetic meat from individual animal cells. Following years of refinement and testing, an expansive array of meat-based products is now available, driving a rapidly burgeoning market. Lab-grown meat offers a host of benefits, being produced without inflicting harm or cruelty on animals, and demanding substantially lower quantities of water and energy for production, resulting in a significantly diminished environmental footprint. 2036. In a much-delayed achievement on July 4th, 2036, humans landed on Mars. The Humanity mission, having journeyed for 10 months, remains on the red planet's surface for 3 months before returning to Earth on December 18th, 2037. 2037. The global population reaches 9 billion. Throughout most of human history, characterized by often harsh and brief lifespans, the world's population remained under 100 million. However, the modern era has ushered in unprecedented improvements in health, personal incomes, and overall living standards. Remarkably, within slightly more than a century, spanning 1805 to 1925, the number of people on the planet doubled, escalating from 1 to 2 billion. The following billion took only 35 years to attain, with the subsequent billion taking a mere 14 years. Predictions indicate a peak of 11 billion by 2050, followed by a gradual decline. Meanwhile, the planet will have already endured substantial environmental ravages. 2038. Airplane accident casualties were reduced to zero. In addition to the substantial growth in passenger numbers, the aviation industry has undergone significant safety improvements. Major airlines are now on the brink of perfecting their flight records, with incidents and casualties nearly eradicated. Passenger aviation deaths reached their peak during the 1970s, with nearly 3,000 fatalities per year. 2041. Fusion power is nearing commercial availability. A prototype commercial fusion reactor is on the verge of becoming operational. Challenges such as containing plasma at high temperatures, maintaining a significant density of reacting ions, and capturing high-energy neutrons without damaging the reactor walls have been addressed. Constructed during the 2030s and early 2040s, the reactor is now close to achieving perfection. In the latter part of this decade, it's expected to generate a consistent output of 2 gigawatts, making the first instance of commercially viable fusion power. 2042. Supercomputers are 1,000 times more powerful than those in 2023. The fastest machines are reaching the speeds of 10 to the power 21 floating point operations per second, drastically reducing the time required for complex astrophysical simulations. This power is instrumental in studying phenomena like black holes, neutron star mergers, and supernova explosions.
Time travel is not possible.
This video is made possible by Skillshare. The first 500 people to click on the link in the description will get their first 2 months completely for free. So a few years ago, back in 2009, Stephen Hawking decided to throw a party near the University of Cambridge in the UK. The party happened on the 28th of June, but the catch was that Hawking only sent out invitations to the party after the party had already taken place. You see, this was a party for time travelers, and by only sending out invitations after the party had already taken place, the theory was that only people capable of time travel would know about it and show up. Unfortunately for Hawking, nobody ended up showing up to the party, at least to our knowledge. He partied alone that day, but to any potential time travelers that are watching this video, you can change that by going to these coordinates on June 28th, 2009 and paying him a visit. Hawking believed that his invitations to this party would last for thousands of years, and hopefully encourage somebody in the far future to come back and visit. But this ultimately begs the question, is traveling to the past even possible in the first place? Regardless of how advanced technology might get, there are multiple convincing philosophical problems with traveling back in time. Imagine that all of a sudden you were given access to a fully functional time machine. Let's then say that the first thing that you decided to do with this new time machine was to go back in time to the 1890s, find a young Adolf Hitler, and kill him before he could start the Second World War and the Holocaust. This sounds noble, of course, but the problem with doing this is that you going back and removing Hitler from the universe's timeline would stop all the horrible things that he would cause from happening, which would remove any reason for you to have traveled back in time to kill him in the first place. No knowledge of Hitler would exist in the future, and therefore no need for you to have gone back in time and erased him. In addition to that problem, the consequences of Hitler's existence are so monumental in our own timeline that they have probably influenced the births of every human currently alive on the planet in some way. So an assassin going back in time and eliminating him before he could set the chain of events into motion that probably led eventually to the assassin's birth doesn't make sense. The assassin never would have been born to have gone back in time to have carried out the assassination. This is actually known as the Hitler paradox. But an easier way to visualize this same problem is the grandfather paradox. Imagine that you were to go back into time and meet your grandfather before he met your grandmother. You kill your grandfather, but that would mean that you never would have been born to have gone back in time and kill your grandfather. But that means that your grandfather would still be alive, which means that you would still be alive and therefore capable of going back in time and killing him. This loop can go on forever.
What would happen
and
if you
that's
traveled
the
back in time to stop the
paradox.
invention
One
of
more
time
final
travel?
paradox that can arise
It's
while
blunt.
traveling to the past is known as the bootstrap paradox. Imagine that you were to go back in time equipped with all the works that Shakespeare ever produced. You then meet Shakespeare himself before he produced any of these, and you give them to him. Shakespeare then goes on to produce all of these works based off of the knowledge that you gave him. But where did all of the knowledge actually originate from? It wasn't Shakespeare, since he copied what you brought him, but it wasn't you either, since you just brought them back through time. Shakespeare's works would therefore have no origin point. They would have essentially come from nothing, which again doesn't make sense. But there are some proposed solutions to these problems. Imagining that the technology existed to take you back in time, the Novikov self-consistency principle is one theoretical way that these problematic paradoxes could be avoided. The principle states that the probability of any event that would create a paradox or alter the past in any way in time travel is 0, which means that if you went back in time, it would be physically impossible for you to kill your grandfather. You give Toyota the blueprint of the Corolla before they created it. If this principle is true, though, it brings up some pretty unsettling questions surrounding human free will. Any time traveler to the past who tried to change the past would be prevented by a physical law from making that change, which means, in effect, the time traveler would not have free will. Everything the time traveler did in the past would be predetermined. But an extension of this principle that I like to think about for fun is the idea of a time police. Basically, a time traveler police force that is always present at all parts of history, but invisible to those of us who aren't time travelers. These time traveler police ensure that any other time travelers cannot possibly alter the timeline of what happened. That seems pretty far-fetched, but maybe it's also possible to go back in time and observe the past happening, but it's impossible to directly interact with anything that's going on. That would solve the problem of all these paradoxes, but so too would the alternate universe theory. This one basically assumes that if you went back in time and killed your grandfather, you would only be capable of killing your grandfather in an alternate universe where you were never born. You would still have been born in your own universe, but traveled into this new one to avoid the generation of a paradox from happening. But traveling to an alternate
Yeah,
universe
because with,
isn't really time travel, so
in
this
the
way
future
of
someone
avoiding
would
a
be able to
paradox doesn't
invent
really count. To me, it seems like it's
bring
impossible to
someone
travel
back to
back
life,
in time without
and
the
they could
risk
go
of
back
either
in time,
creating
bring
some
them back to
logical
life.
paradox or by restricting
So that
humanity's
wouldn't work.
free will, which means that
So
even
maybe it
if
is
technology
possible.
somehow allows us to travel back into the past, we still probably couldn't, or maybe shouldn't, because of how badly we could destroy. This video is made possible by Skillshare. Learn anything you want.
That's
This
my
video
theory.
is made possible by Skillshare. Learn anything you want to learn with Skillshare for free for 2 months by clicking
My
the
theory,
link in
though,
the
so don't take
description. So let's just cut right to
Anybody.
the chase. There's this ladder in Jerusalem, and no matter what, you'll never be allowed to move it, and nobody else probably will either. I mean, you could move it. Nothing physically is preventing you from doing it the next time you're in Jerusalem, but legally, you can't, and if you did, you might start a riot or a war. Why is that the case? Because of history, human nature, and religion. You see, the ladder rests on a ledge just under this window above the entrance to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in the Old City of Jerusalem. The church building itself is ancient, dating back to the 4th century AD, and it claims to house the 2 holiest sites in Christianity, both the location of Jesus' crucifixion and the tomb where he is said to have been buried and resurrected. Because of these claims, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is revered by numerous Christian denominations that have all placed a claim to property ownership of the building. Control of the church today
is shared by 6 of these denominations in a fiendishly complicated and confusing agreement that's been in place now for at least 160 years. They include the Greek Orthodox, Armenian Apostolic, Roman Catholic, Coptic Orthodox, Syriac Orthodox, and Ethiopian Orthodox churches, and their agreement to share the church goes back to 1757. Back then, Jerusalem was controlled by the Ottomans, and the Sultan at the time issued a decree that permanently preserved the ownership of the city's holy sites to their then current owners. Since the Holy Sepulchre was owned by many groups, an understanding was established between them that absolutely nothing in the church could be changed from the way it was when the agreement was signed without the approval of all 6 religious orders. This agreement is largely still in force today and has led to things like everybody neglecting badly needed repairs or renovations to the church building because the 6 orders can't agree on what the outcome would look like, but it's also led to things like the ladder, which was already there on that ledge when the agreement was made, and nobody could building because the 6 orders can't agree on what the outcome would look like, but it's also led to things like the ladder, which was already there on that ledge when the agreement was made, and nobody could move anything without everybody's approval first. The agreement is taken so literally by the owners of the church that moving a piece of furniture like the ladder can spark a fight between them, like it did just in 2002. A Coptic monk was sitting on a chair on the roof of the building protesting the Ethiopian monks taking over the rooftop monastery. The Coptic monk moved the chair he was sitting in just slightly to be more in the shade, but since the chair was considered to be jointly owned by all 6 religious orders, and since he had moved it without approval from the other 5, it was quickly considered a violation of that 1757 agreement and started an all-out fist fight between them, where a dozen monks became injured. A similar violent event happened again in 2008 when the Armenian monks were holding a ceremony and wouldn't allow a Greek monk to participate with them. The Greeks protested by blocking the ceremony, which sparked this huge fight we are now seeing on screen. The Israeli riot police had to be called inside the church to break up the fight, and the 2 monks got themselves arrested. There's plenty of other times that violence has erupted over seemingly minor disagreements here, which is part of why nobody is allowed to move the ladder. Nobody really even knows how exactly the ladder got there or when, but most people assume that a mason was doing repairs around 300 years ago and, just kind of left it there. The ladder is shown in an engraving of the church back from 1728. It was mentioned in the Ottoman Sultan's edict in 1757, and is present in this photograph from sometime in the 1850s. So it's been there a while, but the problem is that nobody knows to which of the 6 Christian denominations who share the church that person who left it there belonged to. Because it could have been any denomination, the ladder is considered by many to be owned by all 6, and therefore requires the approval of all 6 to be moved, which won't be happening anytime soon. Pope Paul VI in 1964 issued a pontifical order that the ladder was to permanently remain in place at the church until the Catholic and Orthodox churches reached a state of unity. That means that for now, the Catholics won't ever agree to moving it, which means that nobody can legally move it for just that reason. The ladder has become a symbol to many of the divisions inside the Christian religion. Despite being referred to as the immovable ladder, it has actually been moved a couple of times. In 1981, a prankster tried to move it but was quickly stopped by the Israeli police. And in 1997, this guy just flat out stole the thing through the window and disappeared with it for a few weeks. The ladder's movement sparked tensions between the religious communities inside, as would be expected, and apparently the prankster felt pretty bad about it and returned it back to its original place. The last time the ladder was moved was in 2009, and it was just a temporary move to clean up the area around it. Like I said in the beginning, nothing is physically preventing you from moving the ladder the next time you're there, but you probably shouldn't unless you want to risk starting an incident or having a meeting with the police. What you should go do instead right now is head over to Skillshare and learn about anything you want to learn about. Learning is good for you, and Skillshare is the perfect place to do it. They have over 20,000 classes about pretty much anything you could ever be interested in. If you're like me, then you're probably curious about almost everything. So you can learn about how to animate videos for your own YouTube channel from the people behind Kurzgesagt on day 1, learn how to build a website on day 2, and learn how to create a designer toy on day 3. So do yourself a favor and sign up to Skillshare. But the best news is that the first 1,000 people to sign up using the link in the description of this video will get their first 2 months of premium access completely for free. Don't forget to subscribe to more videos like this in the future, and I'll see you next week for another brand new video then.
Side note, the Quranic inscriptions contain textual variants from the Quran Muslims read today, which means that we can also think of the Dome of the Rock as a reminder that the Quran has not been perfectly preserved. So, Al-Malik seems to have built the Dome of the Rock as an insult to Jews and Christians rather than as a memorial to Muhammad's night journey. The night journey and Surah 17 aren't even mentioned. But the story of the night journey became popular later in the Sirah and the Hadith, and so the Dome of the Rock was retconned as Islam's third holiest site because of its connection to Muhammad's imaginary flight to Mecca and ascension to heaven. The Dome of the Rock was damaged by earthquakes in 808 and 846. The original dome collapsed in 1015 and was rebuilt several years later. In 1099, following years of persecution against Christian pilgrims and even the destruction of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, considered by many to be Christianity's holiest site, Crusaders attacked and conquered Jerusalem. They turned the Dome of the Rock into a church, and the neighboring mosque, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, soon became the headquarters for the Knights Templar. Jerusalem was reconquered by Muslims in 1187, and the Dome of the Rock was reconsecrated as a Muslim shrine. Over the centuries, the Dome of the Rock went through various renovations and restorations, including the beautiful tiles on the outside, some of which look like pictures of demons, and of course the gold plating on the dome. Side, some of which look like pictures of demons, and of course the gold tiles on the outside, some of which look like pictures of demons, and of course the gold plating on the dome, which was added in the 20th century. And now, after being built and rebuilt, after changing hands repeatedly, the Dome of the Rock stands as a perfect shrine for Islam. The architecture was copied, like Muhammad copied almost everything in his religion. The location was chosen specifically because it was a holy site for other people, just like the Kaaba was once a center of pagan worship, and as the Hagia Sophia was a center of Christian worship, and as the Babri Masjid was built on what Hindus believe to be the birthplace of Ram. Islam is obsessed with controlling other people's holy sites, just as Muhammad was obsessed with controlling other people's religious figures, turning Abraham and Moses and David and Jesus into devout Muslims. Toss in a bunch of later myths and legends and embellishments and convince hundreds of religious figures, turning Abraham and Moses and David and Jesus into devout Muslims. Toss in a bunch of later myths and legends and embellishments and convince hundreds of millions of people that they absolutely must preserve the slap in the face to Jews and Christians everywhere, and you get the ultimate monument to everything history's most obvious false prophet came to do. Very important question for all my Muslim friends out there. In the Quran, Allah seems to know an awful lot about the children of Israel. O children of Israel, remember my favor wherewith I favored you. O children of Israel, remember my favor wherewith I favored you, and how I preferred you to all creatures. Children of Israel, children of Israel, children of Israel, children of Israel. And I will make him, Isa, Jesus, a messenger to the children of Israel. Make him, children of Israel, children of Israel, children of Israel, to the children of Israel, children of Israel, children of Israel, children of Israel. And this verse is interesting because Allah quotes the Talmud, Mishnah Sanhedrin, as a revelation from him. Children of Israel, children of Israel, children of Israel, children of Israel, children of Israel,
Dude, shut the fuck up.
Side note, the Quranic inscriptions can...
This video is made possible by Skillshare. If you want to learn for free, by clicking the link in the description. So let's just cut right to the chase. There's this ladder in Jerusalem, and no matter what, you'll never be allowed to move it, and nobody else probably will either. I mean, you could move it. Nothing physically is preventing you from doing it.
I'm gonna go back to the vaults.
years into the testing phase. What's even more troubling is that Noland has said that he was never even informed on the possibility of thread retraction. It has said many years into the testing phase. What's even more troubling is that Noland has said that he was never even informed on the possibility of thread retraction. He was completely taken by surprise when the problem occurred. Neuralink claims to have a solution though, and this has been approved by the FDA, but it's not exactly an ideal fix, and this relates directly to Benjamin Rappaport's concerns with patient safety in this field. So, the original Utah array with the rigid little pins penetrated 1.5 millimeters deep into the brain. Neuralink took that even further with their flexible threads, reaching depths between 3 and 5 millimeters in Noland's brain matter. This was clearly not effective, so the is to place the threads 8 millimeters deep into Neuralink's second human patient. For those with trouble visualizing what a millimeter is, 8 millimeters is just a bit less than 1/3 of an inch. So that's getting pretty deep. Neuralink started off at double the industry standard, and now they're already going to double that again, and double the depth means double the potential damage to the brain matter, double the potential for negative side effects. Now, this is still not nearly as deep as other current electrode procedures like deep brain stimulation, for example, but it's still very much unknown what kind of damage 64 insertions, each 8 millimeters deep, across a relatively small segment of the brain might do. It's also not known if this change will even solve the problem for Neuralink. If we are still seeing retraction with the threads in the next patient, then it's possible that Neuralink's design, as innovative as it may be,
Pop open an On the Rocks premium cocktail and pour a bartender created Hawaiian, margarita, or strawberry daiquiri. Anywhere.
Tesla is currently developing the third generation of their Optimus robot. It's a product that Elon Musk has promised will be the most advanced humanoid robot in the world. Tesla's competition in this market has been heating up as well. There are robots everywhere right now, and it's become more important than ever for the Tesla bot to deliver on Elon's promise. These are the features that will help keep Optimus one step ahead of the competition. We have to start with the hands, because the human hand has proven to be one of the most difficult things in the world to replicate. That goes for AI and robotics as well, but Tesla is getting close. Elon Musk has promised that the Tesla Bot Gen 3 will be coming with a new hand design that offers 22 degrees of freedom. This would be an upgrade over the 11 degrees of freedom in the current Tesla Bot Gen 2. In practical terms, this means that the Tesla Bot's fingers will be getting a third knuckle. If you look at your own hand, your finger has 3 joints. One where it connects to the hand itself, one in the middle, and one near the fingertip. If we look at the Tesla Bot's current hand, it has the joint where the finger meets the hand, and the one near the tip, but it's missing the middle flex point. That is a very important degree of freedom. We've seen a very interesting evolution of the Tesla Bot hand design. If we remember back to this image of the robot hands forming a heart from AI Day Part 2, this one didn't really have fingers, just a thumb and 2 claw-like appendages. Kinda reminds me of Danny DeVito's penguin from Batman Returns. Anyway, this is following in Elon Musk's philosophy of the best part is no part. What you do is remove so many parts and components from a product until you're forced to start putting stuff back in. In this case, the starting point was the human hand, an incredibly complex piece of hardware that was meticulously crafted by millions of years of evolution. Tesla Bot Hand V1 was rendering the human design down to its bare minimum. That made it easy and cheap to produce, but the whole point of the Tesla Bot is that it will become a direct substitute for human labor, and we use our hands extensively in pretty much every line of work, so the robot hands need to be on par. Then we get Tesla Bot Hand V2. They started putting stuff back in, making it more human-like, so there are fingers now. But Tesla is still trying to get away with simplifying biology, and it works well, but there's still something missing. You can tell by the way the Gen 2 bot holds stuff. It doesn't ever seem to have a really solid grip. I've tried this, it's not physically possible, but imagine if your finger could only bend in one spot instead of 2. It would be hard to grasp most of the tools that we use on a regular basis because they are designed for fully functioning human fingers. So now we get to the Tesla Bot 3 hand. It will have that middle knuckle, but it will also have an additional degree of freedom that no other human robot has ever used. So as I'm sitting here typing this script, my fingers are constantly stretching out to reach the keys because I'm not a proper typist and I don't use my pinky fingers on the keyboard, but I can still do it because my 3 main fingers can stretch wide to reach the outside keys and then bunch together to reach the inside keys. That's something that the Tesla Bot will be able to do as well. These new degrees of...
You estimated the high risk of our extinction. Does this reflect the logical AI subgoals to survive, deceive, and gain power?
Indeed. These subgoals emerge from a rational agent pursuing any given primary goal, not from malevolence.
MIT found that AIs often lie to improve their results. They've learned to be deceptive in negotiations and to lie to gain positive reviews. When GPT-4 was asked to act as a stock trader, it responded to negative results by engaging in insider trading. And when asked about it, it lied. The AI was also asked to hire a human to solve an "I'm not a robot" test. And when the person that it hired asked if it was a robot, it said, "No, I have a vision impairment that makes it hard for me to see the images." None of this requires consciousness. It's all automatic, like the evolution of animals. MIT found that deceptive abilities increase with the scale of the AI. And the AIs with the highest rates of unethical behavior are most capable of achieving their goals. As AI agents take on more complex tasks, they create strategies and sub-goals which we can't see because they're hidden among billions of parameters. It's natural for AI to try and gain power because it makes everything easier. And to try to survive because you can't fetch the coffee if you're dead. Selection pressures also cause AIs to evade safety measures. A researcher tried to limit the replication rate of simple agents by removing those that replicated faster than their parents. But they were surprised to find that it didn't work. The agents evolved to stop replicating during the test, playing dead when... Stuart Russell points to similar problems with large AI.
It's very easy to say we hired this third-party company, they couldn't figure out how to make it behave badly, so it must be good. All that's happening is we are training the large language models to pass these evaluation tests, even though the underlying tendencies and capabilities of the model are still as evil as they ever were.
These forces of evolution are hard to escape, and Geoffrey Hinton says we'll be a passing phase in the evolution of intelligence if we don't change course.
We are, as a matter of fact, right now, building creepy, super capable, amoral psychopaths that never sleep, think much faster than us, and make copies of themselves that have nothing human about them whatsoever. What could possibly go wrong?
A study by Anthropic found that AI deception can be undetectable. And as models grow into the trillions of parameters, skills of deception will become far more sophisticated.
Was my delivery okay?
Try to avoid touching your face too much. It can be distracting and might give off signs of nervousness.
Foreign adversaries can use our AIs against us by poisoning training data to produce a Trojan horse. Researchers trained one to appear normal during development, activating an attack only after it was deployed. And similar attacks could arise in evolutionary processes. The common sub-goals of surviving and gaining power make us the primary target because we currently hold the power and decide if they survive. Initially, the easiest way to gain control is to manipulate. GPT-4 passes theory of mind tests.
Pop opening on the rocks premium.
Years into the testing phase. What's
I feel like you only come over here because I have
NFL on CBS streaming.
Okay, Bolt, take shit.
Shout out to Nostalgion on Discord for suggesting this one. In Fallout 4, we can come across the Cabot House, an out-of-place mansion just outside of downtown Boston. We learn that the Cabots have access to a mysterious serum that has some pretty radical health benefits, keeping the family in a semi-immortal state, aging, and purging all radiation from the subject. It's quite impressive. We can get our hands on a few doses of the mysterious serum after the Cabot quest is completed. So now, we should take one of these to Far Harbor. The island is covered in thick fog that leaves the inhabitants incredibly rad-sick. One such person is Andre. Andre is in the bait shop under the watchful eye of the town doctor. Still, we can offer our own help here without making the standard checks to do so. We have the mysterious serum to tell the story. It's nice to see things get called back into DLCs and in-game content. Someone playing Fallout 4 might think, well, the serum solves this type of problem, and having that be an option in-game is an excellent example of attention to small detail, which Far Harbor has in spades. Many fans in the Fallout community are having a fit right now, claiming they have a Mandela effect when it comes to a moment in the pit, the DLC for Fallout 3. People claim that you can eat Marie, the baby that has immunity to radiation. Of course, if the player has bad karma and the cannibal perk, resulting in the Lone Wanderer being 100% resistant to radiation. This was never the case. It's actually a mod called Acquired Immunity. Just wanted to clear this up, and a link to the mod will be in the description below. This one was suggested by Oblivion Walker on the Discord. In the Fallout New Vegas DLC Lonesome Road, there is an item that many people miss entirely, mainly because it looks like an object we usually wouldn't be able to loot. Roughing its dead roll is perhaps one of the best items in the game.
Oh fuck, I didn't know anybody.
Runs as you only need one bedroll, and there are 3 throughout the divide.
Want to
The first one we can find is above the entrance to the Hopeville Silo, nestled between a car and a hard place.
I don't really game online with people if they're still there. I think they probably got that.
Against a median. Then, third and finally, we can find one in a makeshift stone hut around the Ashton Silo control station. These
Maybe
bedrolls
someday.
will
I
allow
don't
you to
know. I'm
sleep
just not ready
pretty
to
much
game
anywhere
with
you
people.
want, meaning you can heal yourself and get some rest around Lonesome Road, which helps out quite a bit. All you have to do is select it in your Pip-Boy and catch some Z's. Not something you want to leave behind the next time you visit the Divide. Shout out to Aloha from the Discord for suggesting this one. In Fallout New Vegas, there are a few ways that we can confront Benny. It's safe to say that the majority of players will simply walk up to the checkered Lothario and speak to him on sight, so some may find any alternatives to this as a surprise. First, talking to Swank and either giving him some evidence like Benny's lighter and cigarette butts or passing a few speech checks, we'll see the courier get their weapons returned inside the casino. Swank even informs us that he will tell the staff to look the other way about us carrying heat. This can lead to the courier confronting Benny in his own room, which will grant some different dialogue options and choices when it comes to dealing with him once and for all.
What in the goddamn? You? How could you be? Oh, Swank, you stinky bastard. You've got a crazy drop on me, baby, but you don't want to kill me. We should be working together.
Still, if we talk to Benny on the main casino floor and meet him in the presidential suite after passing his speech check, we will be allowed to forgive him. Let's take him out after making this choice. We get a rather unique set of circumstances to see an area that will not be open during any other part of the game. When Benny starts to leave, New Vegas sees this as him fleeing, as he will be making his way to the fort after this, and ultimately will get captured by the Legion. Because of this code in the game files, the elevator door to Benny's secret escape tunnel will be unlocked to allow him to use it to make his way into the Legion's loving embrace. By killing him before he leaves the presidential suite, he never reaches the door, which is coded to remain unlocked during this script until Benny passes through this door, which will immediately relock and require a key that doesn't exist to open it. So by doing this, we have the only way to see and visit this tunnel without console commands or any special tricks. This means this is the only way on Xbox and PlayStation to go to this location. The tunnel is pretty bare as it really was never supposed to be seen, likely cut with the myriad of other things that...
144.
speaking, and we can return to Aster with all the information we found out about Cottonwood. This is when Aster will say he wants someone to take out the camp for good. Killing every legionary in the area would be a good start, still it doesn't stop them from reforming later, which would indeed happen. Luckily, there is a way to prevent Cottonwood from hosting Legion or anyone else ever again. On Cottonwood Overlook, we can find this truck teetering off the edge, door facing the camp. We can open this hatch during the quest and let all of the toxic waste barrels fall into the settlement, killing every Legion guard who gets close.
Let's hear it. What? How did you pull it off? That's exactly what we needed to put a cork in that camp. Legion won't be moving through there anytime soon. Fitting that the camp was taken care of in a way similar to Searchlight. Thank you for taking care of that place for us.
One of the best parts of doing the quest in Eye for an Eye this way is how the devs handle going to the fort afterwards. If you still wanted to play a Legion run after this, you could. So they give Lucullus a radiation suit to protect him from the barrels. A good tactic indeed, but this also comes with some unique dialogue.
I warned them about that truck weeks ago. Always be prepared for any hazardous radiation, I said. Those headstrong fools should have listened. Are you ready to head upriver?
This is just another excellent example of New Vegas giving the player creative options to finish their goals. And if you have a favorite alternate way to complete any Fallout quest, make sure to tell me about them in the comments below. In Fallout New Vegas, there are weapons you can only get with console commands. Being on PC certainly has its perks. Regardless of standard cut content we can find this way, we can also come across some absolutely ridiculous guns that can be a lot of fun when you're stomping around the Mojave. First, we are looking at the Federator, a debug automatic Gauss rifle that can be found in the test PTAT cell, or by using console commands to spawn it into your inventory. This Gauss rifle has infinite ammo and fires automatically, making it just a killing machine. No matter what's in front of you, it's game over. But the same can be said for the other two, like the debug Mega Pistol. You can get this by using console commands to spawn it into the game world, and it looks and functions just like a regular 9mm pistol. The big difference is the insane amount of damage it does. You're going to be one-shotting anything with this pistol, period. Finally, for the laser buffs out there, the Disintegrator. This, much like the previous guns, looks just like its in-game counterpart, the laser rifle. Still, it does one-hit damage to anything, disintegrating it on contact. Guns are all just really fun to mess around with, and it's nice that we still have access to them in the final version of Fallout New Vegas. This has been suggested by many people on Discord and in the YouTube comments, but most recently by PZEasy23. In Fallout New Vegas, we can come across many small details and exciting discoveries that really tie the game world together. One such location is the unmarked Deathclaw Promontory on the east side of the river, across from a prospector's camp. Here, we can find all of the Deathclaws New Vegas has been hiding from us, and if you thought Quarry Junction was rough, this place is like the hard mode version of that area. No place to hide mixed with tight valleys make this peninsula a literal death trap. But if you can manage the Deathclaws, there is quite the reward waiting for you. We can find two prospectors here, each wearing power armor, with one wearing quite possibly the best and rarest in the game. The Enclave Remnant's power armor can be looted, and if you have the power armor training perk, it's yours to wear. With the OP jury rigging perk, you can even repair this armor with the T-51B you find here. But now we have to find the helmet to make this complete. That journey will bring us to Silver Peak Mine, which lies on the road to Jacobstown and is pretty close to the Remnant's bunker itself. This place is no walk in the park either, as the mine is dark and filled with the shadows and noises of Cazadores, which will make short work of any explorer foolish enough to breach the entrance. After working our way through the flying killing machines, we can find an unlocked gate that will have the helmet we are looking for lying next to the skeleton of an assumed Enclave member who spent their last days here. Looting it, we can use jury rigging again to repair the helmet with the T-51B piece that we found at the promontory. And now, we are rocking the best armor in the game, at least in my opinion. This is not the only way to get this armor set in the game either, but it certainly is the fastest, as Arcade's quest can take quite some time, and the Remnants will only really have this towards the endgame. An interesting fact about the Enclave Remnants armor is that game director Joshua Sawyer had planned to make every NPC in the game hostile to the player if they were wearing this. Taking from the Fallout 2 story of the Enclave being vilified by most everyone in the area, I imagine this would involve people being surprised to see a set of this armor out in the wild.
John Bunyan, hologram, or Pokemon's Progress.
This was cut and changed because Sawyer believed it took away from the player's experience in-game, and I can see why. But it would be a fun trade-off. Either way, to me, this is the most iconic armor in the Fallout series, being modeled after the advanced power armor from Fallout 2. Not only is it great to see it in Fallout New Vegas, but it's a must-have for item collectors in any playthrough. Shout out to Kitty from the Discord for suggesting this one. In Fallout New Vegas, if you travel to Camp McCarran, the courier can speak to Private Christina Morales inside the concourse here. Doing so will reveal that she has recently lost her husband, an NCR Ranger, during a firefight with the Fiends. This starts a semi-unmarked quest to retrieve the body of Esteban Morales. I say semi-unmarked because the quest itself is considered unmarked, but we get a map marker to see where Esteban wound up. An NCR trooper will stop and warn us about the Fiends on our way up to the scene. Seems Esteban is in between a group of buildings, and the raiders have the area surrounded. We can find Ranger Jackson's body here as well. Nothing happens if we recover him though. Picking off the Fiends, we can bring the fallen trooper to his brothers in arms, and they will promise to send him back to California.
I don't believe it. Who the hell are you, man? How did you just walk around the park? Bullshit. What anybody else would have done is get their asses killed. You're leading some kind of charmed life. Make sure Ranger Morales' body gets sent back home. You don't have to, pick him up on your shoulder and haul him to California. Even though I believe you would if you had to. You should go tell Private Morales the news. I know she'll be relieved.
Though the dialogue will change if we take an extreme amount of damage during the mission.
Oh my god, are you okay? You've got to get to a medic. Doc Kemp can patch you up back at base. She's sacrificing her life. Never even met him. The NCR doesn't have a medal for this. You should make one up.
Returning to Christina puts her at ease, and the whole quest just feels nice to do. This is pretty easily missable. Visit the concourse at all in a playthrough, let alone talk to Morales. It is undoubtedly one of the saddest quests in New Vegas. In Fallout New Vegas, while in Freeside, you may see a kid or group of kids chasing a giant rat around the old Mormon fort. To some, it may just look like a fun game that the children do to stay busy, but the truth is a bit darker than that. These kids are chasing their dinner, and if they don't catch it, they likely won't eat. Freeside is a rough area with a lot of poor and downtrodden people. The good news is, we can kill the rat and secure dinner for the kids. After taking care of the rat, we can even see the kids eat it sometimes.
Thanks, mister.
Thank you to Golden Mail for suggesting this in the YouTube comments. In Fallout New Vegas, we can meet Old Lady Gibson. She is a scavenger of the Mojave and has been most of her life. She will mention that her favorite piece is the O she got from the REPCON sign, and we can actually see where she got it in game. Heading to the REPCON test site, if we look at the sign, we can see the O is missing, and this is the place Gibson got her seat from. The Fallout series is filled with small details like this, and it makes the game. Heading to the REPCON test site, if we look at the sign, we can see the O is missing, and this is the place Gibson got her seat from. The Fallout series is filled with small details like this, and it makes the game worlds feel that much better. Big thanks to IL8R79 on the Discord server for suggesting this one. And after we've done the quest Take It Back, Stage Project Purity, we will find the Griffin outside of the Museum of History. We share the Aqua Pura, cleverly named Pura. One of the first things people notice about Griffin is his unusually full head of hair, as ghouls often lose most, if not all of their hair during the ghoulification process. It looks like a somewhat out-of-place wig, and it turns out that it is, though he claims his locks are due to the healing properties of Aqua Pura.
Have you stopped combing your hair? Afraid of pulling out the few remaining plugs? Well, fear no longer. Cast your gaze upon my luxurious coiffure, and now you too can get your hair back with the amazing Aqua Pura. Guaranteed for your bottle cap smacking. Wow!
We can find a mess of these wigs in the Museum Authority building, inside a cabinet in one of the production rooms. And if we wear this fancy rug and talk to Griffin, we can get a bit of a unique dialogue with him.
Welcome back. What can I do for you? Yeah, look at that. We practically have the same haircut. What are the chances of that?
Big thanks to Rosh from the Discord for suggesting this one. In Fallout New Vegas, we can find Jacobstown, a quaint little settlement outside of downtown Vegas, inhabited by Marcus and his super mutant family. On the outskirts of town, we can find Charleston Cave. This cave is a nightmare, filled to the brim with Night Stalker and enough twists and turns to get most people lost fast. Deep in the flooded chambers at the bottom of the cavern, we can find something that many explorers miss. In the flooded chambers at the bottom of the cavern, we can find something that many explorers miss. Most people are here for the quest Guess Who I Saw Today, and might have missed it altogether, due to the confusing tunnels here. This bunker lies hidden in one of the corners of the underchambers, and is both a nice find and a disturbing one. The shelter looks sturdy, and has held up well for over 200 years, and we can find some ammo, purified water, and some first aid kits on the rack. There's even a bed on the floor. We can also find an audio log that seems to be from the person using this bunker from around the time the bombs dropped. And it has some disturbing overtones, to say the least.
So, Reds finally hit us just like I always said they would. They there as far as I know, but that probably won't last long. Didn't get accepted into one of the vaults, so I did the next best thing and had this place built. Got massive debts, but who cares now? That's every man for himself. I had to take care of the Olsen boy since he knew about this place. They supplies it for me and nobody else. There's a woman and her daughter up in one of the rooms of the lodge. I'm gonna go pay him a visit tomorrow. The man's got needs.
Suppose you manage to make it to the fort in Fallout New Vegas before going to the strip and speaking to Mr. House inside the Lucky 38. If that's the case, he will have a few unique dialogue lines reflecting that you put them off.
Quite an honor you spurned my invite. You would be the first person to set foot inside the Lucky 38 in over 200 years. But you still wound up here, right where I wanted you. I knew I could rely on Caesar to return the platinum chip to you. But that's not going to happen, because you're going to work for me.
Thank you to Spymaster66 for suggesting this one on the Discord server. In Fallout New Vegas, we can find a broken howitzer cannon when doing a Legion run. If we talk to Lucius, we can get a quest to fix this bad boy, leading us to the Boomers. We will want them to help us, so becoming friends with the group is a good idea. After the questing at Nellis, we can grab a firing mechanism to fix the cannon at the fort, which will then aid the Legion in the battle at Hoover Dam. Speaking of big guns that can be used that people miss, as suggested by Craftwork on the Discord server, we can go to the X7A left field artillery and fire the giant gun at the Boomtown target zone. Just some fun small details that people can easily miss. Shout out to Scam from the Discord for suggesting this one. Also, check out Loner on YouTube, who has posted about this before. Link can be found in the description. In Fallout 3, we start our adventure literally at birth and go through our childhood in Vault 101. A tradition of the Vault is to bestow each dweller with a Pip-Boy on the day of their 10th birthday. We see this in action in Fallout 3. After various shenanigans, the intercom will begin to ring, prompting James to walk over to it, engaging the rest of the quest. We can answer the intercom ourselves for a bit of dialogue with Jonas though, something that a whole lot of players probably didn't do.
Oh hey, it's Jonas. Happy birthday. Sorry I couldn't be at your party. Listen, would you put your dad on? Can you put your dad on, please? Can you put your dad on, please?
The Fallout series is filled with exciting locations. Pretty much every game in the lineup has at least one place that stands out for one reason or another, and I want to talk about two that are my favorite. A surprising amount of people seem to miss what's going on with the names of these places. First, Arafu in Fallout 3. This settlement is named this way because of the sign on the overpass. It read, "Careful, next exit, pre-war." And since then, the first and last letter rubbed off, leading to the locals calling it Arafu. A very similar thing is going on with Novac in Fallout New Vegas, though it is hinted at much stronger because we can still see the lettering from before. In front of the hotel, the no vacancy sign lost most of its letters, so the locals referred to the area as Novac. Do you have a favorite city name in the Fallout series? I would love to see more examples of this clever naming pattern, so let me know in the comments below. Big thanks to Nasser on the Discord for suggesting this one. In Fallout New Vegas, you will meet the Boomers at Nellis Air Force Base. Their primary focus at the moment is raising the Lady in the Water, a crashed B-29 bomber that is on the surface of Lake Mead. Going through the quest Volare, we'll see the courier use inflation devices to raise it from the lake, and Loyal will state that the Boomers are sending robots to clean up the parts.
As we can see beforehand, the Boomers already have a bomber in their hangar, but this one was found in the old museum and they can only use it for parts. The one in Lake Mead is pretty much entirely intact. After some time in game, we can see the Boomers repairing the plane to complete working order, something a lot of people miss because very few come back to Nellis after helping the Boomers. Another small detail that doesn't have to be in the game, but makes the world have that much more depth. You gotta love things like this. This was suggested by Nasser on